Hello there, my name is Paul Franklin. I am the Senior Visual Effects Supervisor at DNEG Visual Effects in London, and I was the DNEG Senior Visual Effects Supervisor on Godzilla, Kong, The New Empire. I've worked on a lot of films over the years. I'm currently working on the new Venom movie. I'm directing a short film called Dream of the Black Whales, and I'm perhaps best known for the work I did with Christopher Nolan on the Dark Knight trilogy, Interstellar and Inception, the last two of which won me Oscars.
My name is Aleks Pejic. I'm a visual effects supervisor at DNEG. I worked on the Godzilla Kong, The New Empire. Previous movies I worked on was Fast X, Season 1 and Season 2 of Witcher, which one of them got me a BAFTA. And previously I worked on with Paul on Inception and Dark Knight and Batman Begins early in the career.
Well, the visual effects supervisor is the creative and technical lead of the visual effects team. And in our case, we were heading up the visual effects team for DNEG, for the company that we work for. So DNEG was one of several vendors that worked on Godzilla and Kong, or The New Empire. And there's an overall production side supervisor, as we'll often refer to him. There's a man called Ale Ongaro, who's an old colleague of ours. And so he was working on the production side, working directly with the director, and then we were working with Ale to supervise and lead the sequences that DNEG was doing.
Sometimes helping artists to understand the briefs and deconstructing the problem into individual tasks, and also presenting that back to the client supervisor in order to understand the current states of developments of the final visuals that were discussed at the beginning.
I grew up with the Japanese Godzilla movies. It's a very venerable franchise. I think the first movie was made over 70 years ago. And so what was interesting working on this film is that there's an established language for how these creatures move. You know, we've seen them moving in other films, and there's very much a sort of a series of conventions, you might call that, within the films, in the way that they're big, they're bulky, you know, they typically smash up all the buildings that they're nearby. You know, that's what people go to see. They want to see this sort of unbridled destruction. The different films over the years have, varied widely in their character. You know, some of the films are more serious, some of them are much more just entertainment. And I would definitely say that our film is in the entertaining end of the spectrum.
I'm more of a King Kong camp, so than Godzilla. It might be I don't know.
We should have a fight here. We should start smashing things up.
But definitely, my passion goes back to maybe more recent years with Peter Jackson's and the recent Godzilla movie as well. But yeah, it's iconic King Kong from the original one, 1930 or something. It's something that I think everyone grew up with, and then taking us into a more modern world of Kong and Godzilla these days.
They came up with this fantastic concept of suitimation, I think is the term. And so it's a performer inside a suit, and then it's filmed in the old film, so you'd shoot that with high-speed photography, slow motion. And the slow motion then gives you the scale, so the monster feels really large. But there's a lot of really complex work goes into building those miniature landscapes. You know, you think of all the cities and things and the buildings that get destroyed, and they have to break apart in just the right kind of way. So there's a lot of very complicated model making and special effects work, physical effects. And the performers who played Godzilla, I think they in the original movies, the same person would come back and play the character again and again and again, and it must have been physically very demanding, because they're very heavy costumes, very little ventilation in there. They would be, I think they could only film for 30 seconds at a time, and then they'd probably just pass out from heat stroke. In terms of the reference for our film, the key reference was the previous movie, which is Godzilla vs. Kong, which was directed by the same director, Adam Wingard. And I think that very much established the look and feel that Adam wanted for his films. So there's a definite aesthetic, it's photorealism, but with this sort of enhanced, glowing neon vibrancy, which is very typical of these two Godzilla films. I mean, I don't think I went back and studied particularly the old Toho films, other than I grew up with those things, and so I'm very aware of how those films moved, and you want to pay off the audience expectation of massive destruction and outlandish, larger-than-life action. But at the same time, we're working in this new world of digital visual effects where we're trying to bring as much realism to what we're doing as possible. The client had gone through storyboard. By the time we're working on it, we're working from the previs, so pre-visualization. So the storyboards have been turned into low-resolution animations that tell the story, and you can understand what the cinematography is going to be. But then, of course, in the case of the Rome sequence that we worked on, the client then went out and shot a lot of location plates, which are inspired by the previs, but they are their own thing. And so we're then turned over a cut of the live action, and we start working into that and adding the monsters to it. So it's a process. So yeah, storyboards are very, very important, but by the time it gets to us, we're several steps down the line.
Paul, as the most senior supervisor at DNEG and in the business, first of all, I think he's someone who was giving a direction, visual direction, creative direction to all of us, and collaborating with production supervisor Alessandro and understanding this director's vision as well, and then filtering this down, delegating to all of us. And trying to identify the creative goals that need to be achieved throughout the process. And by doing that, it was very clear where we need to be by when, and what are the ingredients that we need to obviously cook together in order to achieve this particular look for each of the elements and sequences that we were awarded. So in that sense, from where I stand, Paul was this a creative, a vision person that on the show was sharing the direction, and then for the rest of us was trying to deconstruct and understand what goes into this vision together.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of visual effects movies over the years, and I've worked on all sorts of different types of visual effects movies, and there's a certain standard, there's a certain look and feel which you're striving to achieve, and my experience is such that I can look at it and say, okay, that hits the mark, this earns its place in the movie. And so I think that sort of guidance is helpful. And as Alex said, the way that we would do it is I would look at stuff and give basically high-level creative notes. I wouldn't get bogged down too much in the technical sides of it, but I'd try and understand what it was that the artists had made and how we could make the shots out of them. And then Alex was dealing very much with the day-to-day, working directly with the teams, solving technical and logistical problems and making sure we were getting stuff out to the sufficient level of quality and making sure we delivered it and got it in front of the client, which is so it's a partnership.
Still, now and then.
I think we were delivering a lot of stuff at 4K.
4K, yeah. Majority of the work was 4K.
Yeah, we delivered a couple of different formats. So there was the widescreen, and then there was also the
anamorphic stuff, and the spherical stuff. But it was a lot of it was 4K.
Yeah, so 4K resolution, but in some cases we were delivering a 1:240 aspect ratio, and then in other cases we were delivering 1:190, I think it wasn't it? Or
1:1, yeah.
That's and 120 was it? 1:120, I can't remember.
1:120. I can't remember either.
No, anyway, it's. For those sequences which are destined for IMAX exhibition. So we were delivering an IMAX version and an anamorphic version, but not necessarily, all the shots didn't get delivered in both formats. Some shots were in one format, some in others. Aside from that you're reformatting the picture to a different aspect ratio, these days it doesn't really make that much difference because we're mostly working at 4K, which is the maximum projected resolution of a digital IMAX image anyway. So a 70mm release, that would be something that's taken care of in post-production. So we would give them 4K digital file, and they will reformat that to a 70mm print, assuming they're making one. To be perfectly honest, I think very few films get a 70mm IMAX release these days. So it's a bit different to when I was working on, or we were both working on The Dark Knight, for example, which is a mixture of anamorphic and spherical IMAX. But in that case, we were working to 4:3 aspect ratio IMAX, and we were delivering at 6.5K because we were recording out to film, and film can carry much more resolution than a digital print can. I think it's interesting. You feel differently about different films, not just because of what the final film is like, but also the experience of making it. And so years ago, we worked together on the movie Inception, and that was a great experience. We had a lot of fun making that film, and it turned out to be a great film as well. Because Christopher Nolan is a bit of a cinematic genius. There's a movie I worked on many, many years ago at the beginning of my career as a VFX supervisor, which is a British movie called Revelation. And I think it's a bit of a cult film these days, but it was fantastic fun to make. It was just a great group of people. We're in fantastic places. Not a big budget movie, so I always remember that film very fondly. So different reasons for liking films.
Same here. Yeah, it's more to do with the people they work with and the process itself, rather than sort of I like in the movie. It's more as a end result of the process that you go through. But when it comes to the particular shows, I think they're all just very close to the heart, whether that's, I can just maybe give you various different reasons why certain things are stayed in the memory for longer than the others, whether that's Inception and particular day on set when I seen a particular scene, how it was shot, since was involved with zero-G and the tunnel and the camera just going upside down and set piece just turning around, or whether there was on a recent one with Mr. Peter Chang on Fast X, particular motion control scenes that we did and shot together, and how it was constructed on. So it's the process and the moments that would always give you these final results.
Challenges you face in projects, sometimes it can be a creative challenge. So when I did the film Interstellar, that film started with for me, it started with a conversation with the director, Christopher Nolan, and he asked me how we might represent time as a physical dimension and then build a set out of it. So make time physical and turn it into a set. And that essentially is where the Tesseract sequence in that film started. We started thinking about that. We had no idea at the time. So that was an exciting creative challenge, but at the same time, you're also very aware of the fact that you've got to do something pretty special to earn its place in this movie. So that was, interesting creative challenge. Sometimes it's time challenges. I've worked on movies where there have been extensive reshoots or additional photography very late on in the process, and then you've got to turn the visual effects around in this very compressed time frame. So I've worked on movies where we're down to the last 30 minutes before the film has to be distributed to cinemas around the world, and we're delivering our final shot in that last 30 minutes. That's happened to me a couple of times, and that's increasingly the way that films, particularly big blockbuster films, get made, because one of the advantages of the digital process is that it's very, very flexible until the last minute. In the old days when we were making things on film, there's a lead time, because you've got to shoot it out to a negative, it's got to be cut into the film, the prints have to be made of the film, that takes weeks. So you're delivering months ahead of when the film gets released. But now you can literally be delivering on the evening that the film's having its premiere. And that can cause some sleepless nights, I'd say. I think the biggest challenge any of us face is when we are confronted with a blank slate, and the filmmaker says, well, I don't know what this should look like. You guys are the experts. You come up with something and impress me. And then you're thinking, I quite enjoy that, but at the same time, it also can be very challenging, because you just get this constant series of rejections until eventually, oh yeah, that looks good. And I had one show many years ago where we worked very hard on a creative effect, and we got to something like the 200th version of the thing. And eventually the client said, well, I'll just have to put it in the film because you don't have anything else. And they put it in the film, showed it to their director, and the director said, this is fantastic, I love it. And said, next day you say, yeah, it's in the film, it's fine. You know, we never got thanked for it.
The only thing that I can add to this is again and again, it just shows in my experience that when you look at the beginning of the work, that we assess it, and the things that I thought they would be the most complicated, it's quite the opposite. The things that I actually thought they would be straightforward, they turn to be the hardest for some reason.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Whether that's a lock-off shot, and you think, oh, that's just easy comp, or whether that's, I don't know, moving car or vehicle.
I think it comes from
always the other way around.
The stuff you know is going to be difficult. You think hard about it and you prepare for it more. And so it generally tends to go okay. And then the stuff you think, yeah, that's straightforward. And it's like, oh no, it wasn't.
So that's a one consistent thing that I find. It's always the other way around.
Your biggest enemy is complacency. You should never think that, yeah, I've got this, I've got the number of this one. Yeah. You always have to say, do I really understand what's going on here? Ask yourself the question again. Well, yes, we still need actors. The simple answer to that question is, an actor isn't just a thing that you put in front of the camera to produce an image. An actor is an artist who is contributing to the telling of the story. And you know, the best actors, they will have an interpretation of the character and how they want to present the character through the performance, and what they feel are things that are interesting in the story. And they may not be things that you have thought of. You know, I've directed a few short films and I've worked with some fantastic actors, and they have revealed things in scripts that I have written which I hadn't thought about. And I don't think I see any realistic possibility of AI replacing that part of the process. What AI I think can do for us though, is it can you know, eliminate some of the very repetitive manual work that we do in visual effects, which is a challenge in itself, because often those tasks are the entry-level tasks that when you first start as a visual effects artist, you know, you're doing something like you're doing the rotoscoping or the match moving. You know, I think, I don't know about you, Alex, but I certainly started out doing very low-level tasks in the visual effects pipeline. And they're being eliminated by these new AI processes. So there is a question in my mind as to, you know, where do people start? You know, if those opportunities aren't available, where do they start? I mean, perhaps the answer is that those entry-level artists will already come in doing much more accomplished things because they've got the support of this new technology. But yeah, I don't think actors are going away anytime soon. Because at the end of the day, the AI that we currently have, which is really machine learning rather than AI, it doesn't have any ability to make a value judgment on whether that's a good performance and that's a bad performance. It doesn't know. All it can go is on past examples say, well, this is a good performance because all these other ones that are like it were a good performance. You know, if you're using AI tools to generate imagery, they can do some amazing things, and they can really help you find an idea, but they won't tell you this is the right idea. You know, that's still down to you and your creative judgment.